All right, Tom, let's talk Patriots here. It seems like the word is circling quarterback
Shocking.
at number 3. Who's it going to be? Is that the move? Any chance they trade down?
I think there's a chance of all those things, Brockman, because there's still another team in between, obviously the Bears and the Patriots. Do the Commanders stand in? Do they take the second best quarterback? Can they? And it's a long shot because it would cost so much, but could they get up to number one? If not, and if Washington is convinced that it needs more than the quarterback, and it wants to build in another direction, they could trade down. I mean, I think that it's informative if you look through who is conducting interviews with the top quarterbacks at the combine. And listen, when I see just a million tweets about this guy met with this team, it's like, yeah, every team is going to meet in some capacity, formal, informal, at the All-Star game or at the combine or on a pro day or a 30 visit. Everybody's going to talk to every player because even if they have no chance to go up and get the guy, they at least want to have some frame of reference. So if that player becomes available a year or two down the line, if there's a trade possibility, if they get released, whatever, they've met them and they've done the homework and they've got the background, the medical and everything else. So, who are those other teams that right now are doing interviews with Jaden Daniels and Drake May and Caleb Williams? It's the Giants, who have the number 6 pick. It's the Falcons, who are at number 8. It's the Vikings, who are at number 11. It's the Raiders, who are the furthest from striking distance of those teams. But they obviously have a big need for quarterback. I reported on Super Bowl Sunday on NFL Network that, in every one of the GM interviews that were conducted, Mark Davis and Antonio Pierce were grilling the candidates about saying, all right, how do we go get the quarterback? How can we move up? What would it take? What would you do? It's a pretty clear sign. And Mark Davis said to me, yeah, it's the most important position. Of course, I'm going to ask him how they would pull it off here. It certainly seems like the Raiders would like to find a way to move up. They've also got a new general manager in Tom Pelissero, who might to some degree be the voice of reason, for lack of a better term here. Pelissero was the Chargers GM for 11 years. I believe he only moved up once in the first round. That was to go and get Melvin Gordon. No team wants, I think that's one of the misconceptions, no team wants to move up. In a perfect world, things fall to you and you end up with the right guy, which is how the Chargers stood pat at number 6, and Justin Herbert came to them in the draft several years ago here. Can the Raiders afford to do that and get one of these top quarterbacks? That's probably going to be tough, but that's not to say that, whether it's J.J. McCarthy or it's Michael Penix or it's Bo Nix or one of these other quarterbacks, that guy couldn't be the one that's sitting there. And maybe you save yourself a couple of extra high draft picks that you would have to trade to move up into one of those top spots.
Yeah, New England also, the rumor is draft one of these young kids and maybe sit him behind a veteran. Who could the veteran be that could come in and start next year?
Well, they got a ton of money to spend, the Patriots, because they got a really low cash spend. They got tons of cap space, and like half their team's free agents. If you go right down the list, Brockman, I mean, a lot of those guys, their receiver core seems to be entirely free agents. Yeah. Kendrick Bourne's a free agent. Trent Brown and Riley Reif, Ezekiel Elliott, who played quite a bit last year. I mean, this is going to be wholesale turnover on that side of the football. Defensively, they've been pretty good, but they got key free agents, on that side as well. All of which is to say, I think that there's a lot of different scenarios that are on the table. Elliot Wolf, who's their he's still the director of scouting, but he's the guy who's going to be making the final decisions on these picks. He, of course, is the son of the legendary executive Ron Wolf, yep. Hall of Famer who built the modern-day Packers back in the early 90s with Favre and Reggie White and company. And one of Ron Wolf's longtime tenets was you always draft a quarterback. You keep swinging. Even if you've got one, even if it's in the 7th round, you get a quarterback every single season. And that's why through the years, a lot of the backups they had in Green Bay, whether that was Ty Detmer or Kurt Warner, who was in camp with them at one point. I believe Mark Brunell was in camp with them at one point. They drafted Aaron Rodgers when they still had Favre, and they drafted Jordan Love when they still had Aaron Rodgers. All the people who were making those decisions, Ted Thompson, Brian Gutekunst, learned from Ron Wolf. And if anybody is going to take that sort of a philosophy to heart, you would think that it's Ron's own son, Elliott, here. So one way or another, yes, I anticipate that the Patriots are going to make over that quarterback room. It doesn't sound like at this point there's anything imminent in terms of trading Mac Jones. Patriots have only said that, yeah, he's still on the roster. I would be surprised if that's the case by the time that we get to training camp, perhaps even not by the time that we get to the NFL draft here. They know that they need to flip things. Bailey Zappi might be a part of that room in some capacity as a backup or whatever it might be. But they're going to be adding one, if not two quarterbacks one way or another. And again, if they choose to compete for any of these top guys, I haven't really heard Kirk Cousins, but again, you rule nothing out at this time of year. Baker Mayfield. It could potentially be that. They've got the capital if they want to go and try to make things real interesting and convince one of those guys to come into what is essentially a rebuild in New England.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.